Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. Humans are notoriously bad at making predictions. I'm going to make some anyway. I'm going to make some predictions about the future of tech and software developers in the year 2025, which is close upon us. Or maybe you're listening to this in 2025. Hello from the past. It's me. Maybe you know something I don't. Maybe I wish I knew something you do. Anyway, I'm going to make some predictions. Last year I did this. The year before I did this. I like doing this not only personally because I want to stay ahead of trends, and I make some bets every year as to what to learn. And I'll tell you about what I'm going to plan on learning this year. Also, I'm going to take a very controversial stance on AI, or maybe this won't be controversial by the time you hear this, but I think a lot of people are investing time into AI or data science or things that I don't think are going to quite pan out in the way you might expect. So, what are my predictions for 2025? Let's start. This trend should not shock you. I see the role of full stack developer widening even more. Developers are going to be doing even more in 2025. That's for sure. It went from being a specialist, like, oh, you know, front end, and you're really good at CSS or something like that, or you're really good at JavaScript, to then being like, hey, could you do a little bit of backend stuff? This rise of the full stack developer really started happening, where it's like, oh, can you do a little bit of backend stuff, since now we have Node.js and Express, and it's kind of the same thing, right? And then you started doing a little bit of that. And then it got to, hey, you know, AWS makes infrastructure pretty simple. Can you deploy a Lambda function on AWS? Can you go investigate why a pipeline is failing? And the developer role expanded a little bit more. And now today, I've said this quote a bunch of times. I've quoted this statistic a bunch of times because I think it's way more important than anybody has given it credit for. The number of people who identified as front-end developers in 2024 in the Stack Overflow survey was the lowest it's ever been. That means barely anybody is identifying as a front-end developer. So what do they identify as? Full stack developers for the most part. It doesn't mean they're equally good in back end and equally good at front end. I've rarely ever met people that really fit that description. I've met a few. Most people have really strong knowledge in one area or the other, and they can kind of go to the other area as needed. Long gone are the days, basically, when you could purely write front-end code and be like, oh, I can't touch that database, not my issue. It's more like, you're going to have to know how to do some basic SQL or Mongo or something like that, know how to write API routes in the back end. That's kind of the table stakes stuff now. It just is. But as this expansion has happened, we've just got more and more stuff coming in. It went from just knowing backend to knowing a little bit of cloud to infrastructure. And I see the next stage is AI. But not AI as in like knowing calculus and linear algebra and vector math and all these things that actual data scientists need to know. I see it as knowing how to leverage AI models into your work. Now, this was my prediction actually last year. Didn't quite come to fruition. This year it will come to fruition. I'm almost certain of it. Maybe I'm biased a little bit too, because I work at a company where we are using AI. And what I see on the full stack team, what we're doing is we're understanding how to leverage an API that's built on top of OpenAI or Hugging Face or Llama, and then deploy our own logic on top of that so we can build out products that make sense, right? We want to train this OpenAI on some data we have. We have a ton of data. We know that OpenAI is not sufficient for the stuff that we want it to give us back, right? We want to ask very specific questions, for example, to OpenAI, like pretend you're a content creator or something like that. And you're like, you know, it'd be really cool if I had a chat bot that could write things in the exact way that I like them written and kind of use my experiences. It could talk basically like me. But in order for it to do that, it would need to have some sort of memory of all the things that I usually write about in my experiences and my style of writing. And the window for memory in OpenAI and ChatGPT is not that long, right? So how can you get around this? You can train the model. You can train that AI on some data. I actually have a small project that I expose to Parsity students. Expose, that's kind of a weird word to use. I share with Parsity students that I'm willing to expose or share with you, whatever you prefer, not in a creepy way. And you can use that as well. It's a really cool project. It shows you how easy it is to train something like OpenAI on your data. It does cost a little bit of money. OpenAI API is not free, but for around $1, you can get pretty far with it. It's a pretty cool thing to do. So I see this as being the future. The new future for full stack developers is learning how to integrate these AI models into their workflow. And I see the rise of the product engineer, which is kind of related. What is a product engineer? You're like, oh, great, another thing that I got to know now. Front end, back end, product engineer. where does it end? Where does it all end? It never ends, my friend. So the product engineer, which is kind of what I feel like I do, is a person that not only cares about the logic and functionality of the application or code that they're writing, but how does it actually service the business? So these are the people that I see are going to be rising in the future as companies that are smaller and outside of the big tech org realm. When they keep hiring people as they have been in healthcare, in finance, in manufacturing, construction, as these industries continue to incorporate technology, they don't really have the same idea about what a tech team should do. They're like, you can build the code, but what about like what should we be building? Right? Like, why don't you tell me what we should be building? Why don't you see a problem and tell me, the owner, what we should probably build? Those people are going to be invaluable because, as you might not know, or maybe you do know this, here's a little secret I'll clue you in on. Businesses like monies, right? So if you make them money through thinking of cool product ideas, you're going to be highly rewarded, or at least you're going to be more employable than a person that can't. Now, at a really big tech organization, this likely isn't a skill that they really care about. Like we have teams of people and studies and scientists and all sorts of different like surveys and things that tell us what we should build. But at a small company, less likely. So if you can do that, if you can look at the data, if you can understand what do people want and then present those ideas and be able to build them, super huge, super califragilistic expialidocious. You're going to be one of those types of developers. That's the new developer that'll come out in the year 2026, the super califragilistic expialidocious developer. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode, and I want to let you know that becoming a developer in 2025 is not going to look like becoming a developer in 2024. There is an overload of information, AI tools out there, so much conflicting social media BS that it's hard to understand what you really need to do. If you're interested in working with me and my partner Zubin in a very private, exclusive mentorship program where we teach you not just how to code, but how to reinvent yourself as a career changer and help you make a successful transition from your previous life into tech, we want to talk with you. This program is not easy, it is not short, but it is effective. If you want to schedule a talk directly with me or Zubin, just go to the show notes, parsity.io/inner-circle. Back to the show. Now here's a prediction that I'm kind of sad to predict. JavaScript has been the number one programming language in the last year, and I believe for years on end now. That's not going to be the case going forward. It's going to be Python, probably for the foreseeable future, as more and more companies invest in AI and data science stuff. Python is the language of data science. Libraries like NumPy or Pandas make working with data and doing data engineering stuff and math and scikit. It makes doing stuff with data so easy, or working with CSV files like Excel sheets. I actually do a little bit of this on my own. I'm actually going to be studying this a lot in the new year. I've already started working with Python. I'm having a small 30-day cohort that I'm going to be running in Parsity. If you're interested in joining, just email me for now. I mean, you can go to the website and try to find it if you want, but will write to everybody when that is available. I can't wait to do this one, actually. It's going to be Python, but specifically for data engineering. Like, I don't want to just learn Python to learn Python, honestly. It's not that hard to learn to make like a function and declare variables. What I want to learn how to do is use some of the most core libraries and some of the most popular libraries for data science and data engineering that they're around. Like, basically, I want to know how to dump in some data, some unstructured data, clean it up, and run some sort of statistical inferences on it. Like, understand, like, hey, what are there's correlations between like this column and this column? Are there ways I could plot out or show this data or visualize it in a cool way that might help us understand some things about the data we have? Because a lot of times I have data in SQL tables, or even more often, you'll have data in Excel. So tons of companies run on Excel. So understanding how to take tons of that data, put it into a thing like a Python framework or something like that, like Pandas or Scikit or whatever, and getting some sort of insight into that data, super, super valuable. I want to learn how to do that. I did that a long time ago where I started and then I stopped. I just never went back to it, and I'm ready to start again. So that's what I'm going to be spending my time in 2025 doing. Very top of my list is learning enough Python to be dangerous on the data engineering side and working with like spreadsheets and things like that. Things that I've generally neglected over the years to do a lot of full stack stuff, which I find really enjoyable. And if I was you, I would probably do the same thing. I think having Python under your belt is going to be one of the most important things you could probably do for your employability. And also, it's kind of fun. I mean, Python is just a fun language to use. I love using Python. It's super easy to get started nowadays. You don't even have to like install it on your computer. You can use something like Jupyter Notebooks, or I think there's even a thing that Google has, like some sort of code editor you can use online in the cloud. It's so simple to get started nowadays that it's like too easy. Also, Kaggle.com. I used to use this site a lot back in the days. really cool if you want to get exposure to a bunch of data sets, like really big data sets, like Titanic deaths or Native Americans and diabetes or incarcerated people versus their weight or something like that. And all these weird data sets you can use, like run all sorts of weird statistical mathematical functions over and stuff like that. Now, here's a prediction that I kind of hope I'm wrong about. I see AI hitting a hard limit this year. I believe we're going to hit a plateau. I believe this is not going to be great for the markets. I think that a lot of money is getting pumped into AI and people thinking it will get exponentially better. It's kind of funny. I've heard people literally use that phrase, that it will get exponentially better. And I'm not a mathematician or anything like that, but I know there's an upper limit to everything, right? At some point, you go on a hockey stick-like curve of efficiency or productivity, and it will plateau at some point, right? Like, we don't make cars that can just go light speed, right? They hit a plateau of what's like doable, possible, makes sense. Kind of the same thing with electric vehicles. We've kind of seen that we've hit kind of like the limit on what's possible with electric vehicles or self-driving cars. We've kind of seen, maybe these aren't such a great idea. We've never really seen them take off. I see the same thing happening for AI, and I have some data to back this up. This is not just me just guessing or thinking, oh, AI is just gonna just be dumb. No, there's some big things that I think people are missing out there, or there's not reading these articles or whatever. They're not, this stuff isn't finding its way into the mainstream news, but it's been very interesting for me to follow this stuff because I do think this is something we should all pay attention to. Reuters and a few other people that I follow on Medium, who I trust and write pretty good articles, they have recently done an analysis on the efficiency of scaling up AI models. Basically, the old way of thinking was that you keep throwing more and more data at AI, and it just gets better and better and better with the more data you throw at it. This is proving to be untrue. We're also kind of running out of data. We've trained OpenAI on basically the world's data, and it's really, really good. I'm not diminishing it at all. It's amazing. But it doesn't seem like we're going to get much better. It seems like for every massive amount of data, we get incrementally a little bit better. So eventually, we're going to come to a point where, one, we have no data, or two, the cost of supplying this much data to these models is not worth the result, which seems like we're in a place like that right now. Finding the data is not free. Training the models is not free. This costs hardware cost. This is like the computation costs of doing this kind of thing. You're running a server on Amazon Web Services. Jeff Bezos is sending you a bill every month. Do you think you want to add that much more data into your pipeline? It's taking up infrastructure costs if the result is going to be a model that is so slightly improved that the average user can't tell. I don't see that being a winning recipe for any business. And we see that it's actually not. OpenAI had a massive loss last year, which is crazy because it's like the fastest growing site, I think, ever to be made. Everybody uses it now. It went from being like, oh, that's kind of cool, to everybody uses it and 1 million articles are written on it every day. And every time you go on LinkedIn, somebody's saying, 10 ways you didn't know you could use ChatGPT to improve your workflow. Or, hey, I wrote an ebook about ChatGPT or whatever. Am I guilty of this? I don't even know. But I've definitely written about ways you could use ChatGPT, and I've talked about it on the show. Anyway, everybody's using it. But somehow they lost $44 billion. So massively profitable that they erased this $44 billion worth of debt. It's a little bit scary when you think of a company like that that's that popular, that they're running at that much of a loss to provide something that we've all grown so accustomed to so quickly. Now, while I don't think that AI is just going to get exponentially better and replace us all, which has been like the news and the fear mongering that I hate to read because it's so dumb and kind of based in nothing but people's vibes, I guess. Like, I don't know, like, yeah, I think we're going to get replaced. Like, why? I don't know, because it can write code. I mean, you've seen it writes code. And what do you do? You write code. So, 1-to-1, you're replaceable. It just hasn't happened. I haven't met a single developer replaced by AI. I've never talked to one. I challenge you to go find an article or a post on LinkedIn that says, today I was replaced by AI. I haven't seen it. But I do see from this massive investment and the general public not being really aware of these kind of things or even really thinking about this kind of stuff, that the AI hype cycle will continue. The AI boom will continue. And I don't think that the AI boom will be fueled by better and faster models that are going to replace all workers so big, fat, greedy corporations can replace us all. I think they're going to be let down by that. But I think they're going to be sold on that idea. Now, them being sold on that idea means that people like you and me, if you're a full stack developer or a person wanting to become a full stack developer, that means we are in a great place to take advantage of this. Because as companies realize they have to innovate and use AI, They're going to need more developers that know how to leverage AI, but maybe not more developers who want to create their own proprietary data models, because that, my friend, gets really expensive really quick. So you and I could be in a really good position for the new year. I can only tell you based on anecdotal experience and people I've talked to in the last few months that a ton of people I know are getting interviews, right? Including me, almost all fueled by AI companies, AI in quotes. So do with that information what you will. I'm definitely going to be adding more problems and challenges that involve like Python and doing things with data and working with AI models into the curriculum at both Parsity and at JavaScriptProsApp.com, which is another small business that I own. Basically, this website, which has a bunch of challenges for more mid to senior level developers who want a real challenge, not just kind of cookie cutter apps. Definitely not for beginners, but it's something you might want to check out. Anyway, hope that's helpful. Let's see if any of these predictions or all of them come true in the new year. And maybe this will influence what you're studying, but also take what I say with a grain of salt, because I've definitely been wrong a few times before. See ya. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you're serious about switching careers and becoming a software developer and building complex software and want to work directly with me and my team, go to parsity.io. And if you want more information, feel free to schedule a chat by just clicking the link in the show notes. See you next week.